Welcome back, guys and gals. Matty back again. Now, if you guys can see my basement, I have gear spread out all over the place here. I am getting ready for a winter backpacking trip, and I thought what better time to shoot a video on my winter backpacking gear loadout. So let's dive into it. We'll start out with a pretty important piece of gear when it comes to winter backpacking in the Canadian Rockies. Just a pair of snowshoes. Now, I use Atlas snowshoes. I use a 30-inch snowshoe. I just find that a 30-inch is kind of optimal for a lot of the areas I go. I don't generally backpack on groomed trails in the wintertime. We tend to be breaking trail quite a bit, so a 30-inch snowshoe just gives me a little bit more flotation. And being a guy my size, I get quite a bit of flotation off a 30-inch snowshoe, so that's what I go with. Going along with the snowshoes, I also carry this little bag here. This has my Catulas in it. These are just micro spikes. A lot of times, you know, you hit an area where there's just not a lot of snow, but it is super icy. So I do carry micro spikes with me. It just makes life a ton easier walking on ice. And very much like my summer backpacking setup, I carry one trekking pole. I'm going with the Trek Z 2.0 trifold trekking pole. I do have a snow basket added to it to help with a little bit of flotation with the trekking pole in the snow. But yeah, I use one trekking pole all year round. I've tried the two trekking pole thing and it just does not really work out for me. I prefer just having one pole. I was a hiking stick guy before going to trekking poles, so yeah, I use one trekking pole. Next up is my pack. Now I go with an Osprey Exos 58. This is the backpack I use year round. And if you guys have been watching the channel for a bit, you guys are wondering what happened to the green backpack. Matty had a green Exos. If you guys haven't seen a video I put out recently on my new pack, I kind of went over and explained why I'm rocking a new black and red Exos instead of the green one that I was rocking before. And I'll pop that up into the cards for you guys if you guys haven't seen it. But I go with an Exos 58 year-round for my backpack of choice. The only thing I really change with it in the wintertime is I do use the brain in the wintertime. In the summertime, I go without the lid or the brain. I go with an Exos 58 for my backpack. Now we're going to dive into all the stuff that I carry inside my backpack on a winter backpacking trip. One thing that we're not going to talk about a ton in this video here is my clothing and layering system. I've done an entire separate video on my layering system, and it is pretty in-depth. So if you guys are interested in checking that out, kind of the clothing that I carry and the layering system that I use for backpacking in the Canadian Rockies, I'll pop that up in the cards for you guys. So when you guys are done watching this one, maybe head over and check that out if you're interested. We will talk a little bit about how I store my clothes for winter backpacking trips. I store my clothes in a Hilltops pack, Dyneema food bag, got the gorgeous Matty Outdoors logo on it. I store my clothes inside a Dyneema roll top bag. I like having that little bit of extra protection to make sure my clothes are going to stay dry if, you know, anything happens out there. I mean, generally, I'm not too worried about getting my stuff wet in the wintertime. Everything is just usually really cold, but I do like having to organize my clothes, so I store them in a Hilltops pack, Dyneema food bag. Now, if I'm storing my clothes in the Hilltops pack, Dyneema food bag, you guys may wonder, Matty, where do you store your food? Same as my summer backpacking trips, I store my food in my Ursack Major XL. Now, some people may think that carrying an Ursack in the wintertime is a little bit overkill, but up here in the Rockies where I do all my backpacking and, you know, overnight camping trips and stuff like that, one of the biggest misconceptions people have when it comes to bears and food storage is that bears hibernate all winter, and it's just not true. Bears wake up quite frequently throughout the winter. I've seen bears in every single month of the year out on backpacking trips, so I do still store my food in the Ursack Major XL, and I do still tie to a tree. As always, I bring my DIY homemade Reflectix koozie for keeping my food warm while it's rehydrating. If you guys aren't sure what Reflectix is, it's basically just like that wraparound hot water tank insulation. I just made like a little pouch out of it, very, very roughly made with some, you know, reflective foil tape. And I basically just take my rehydrated meals, stick it inside there, close the flap, and it just keeps my food warm a little bit longer, especially when I'm out backpacking in, you know, like 0 Fahrenheit or minus 20 degrees Celsius type weather or colder. Being able to make sure that my food stays a little bit warmer is key to me, so I always have my Reflectix koozie with me. Now, my cook system for winter backpacking trips is a little bit different than my summer backpacking cook system. One thing that's the same is my Toaks titanium spork. I absolutely love this little spork. I know a lot of people like the long-handled sporks or spoons, but for me, the regular size spork is just fine. Take off the orange stuff sack here for my Toaks 1100 mil titanium pot. It's got the little frying pan lid on it, but I honestly don't ever use it as a frying pan lid. It doesn't really work very well. Once you have anything weighted in it, it just kind of falls down. Now, first thing we'll pull out is a little baggie of fire starters. I carry a couple little chunks of a zip cube for my fire starter. Now, this may seem a little bit odd to some of you guys and gals who watch my backpacking videos and hear me talk about weight savings and you know, trying to get to an ultralight backpacking gear loadout, and then you see me pull out an MSR Whisper Light. When it comes to winter backpacking trips, I know from experience and seeing other people struggle with them that canister stoves are just, in my opinion, a terrible option for winter backpacking trips. Now, that's just the area that I go and the temperatures that I tend to go into, which is, you know, anywhere from -20 Celsius or 0 Fahrenheit to, you know, -35 Celsius, which is pretty much -35 Fahrenheit. So I need to make sure that I have a stove that I can rely on all the time. I've had this stove since I was like 19 years old. This thing is absolutely bomb-proof. This is one of my absolute favorite pieces of backpacking gear that I've ever bought, and I hardly use it, but I absolutely freaking love my Whisper Light stove. To go along with that is the pump for my stove. I carry a Bic lighter and my little knife. The fuel bottle for my Whisper Light. If you guys have seen any of my winter backpacking trip videos, you guys know that this is part of my backpacking cook system in the wintertime, because I do 99% of my cooking and snow melting over a fire. I do always carry a saw with me on my winter backpacking trips. I always carry a 1 liter Nalgene bottle with me on a winter backpacking trip. That is just for the ability to put hot water in the Nalgene bottle and use it as a hot water bottle overnight. And I always start off a winter backpacking trip with either a Powerade or a Gatorade, just something that's got some electrolytes in it. Now, the benefit of this obviously is it's going to give me a lighter weight water bottle at the end. So, you know, I'll usually drink this on the first day hiking into wherever I'm going, and then I'll rinse it out really well, and it becomes a secondary water bottle for me. Now, a little bit of a luxury for me on a winter backpacking trip that I always bring is my GSI backpacker mug. I've tried like the Helinox Chair Zeros and all those different little collapsible backpacking chairs that are really lightweight, and honestly, I just don't find them all that comfortable. I much prefer just bringing my Z-seat with me and finding myself a log or a stump or, you know, a big rock, and I'll just put my Z-seat down and park my butt on that. That works just fine for me. A bag of shit tickets, very much like my summer toiletry kit. It's got my toothbrush and some hand sanitizer, some lip balm, a little bit of sunscreen, a little brush for my hair. First aid kit, exact same first aid kit I carry on a summer trip. I carry a headlamp with me as well. We have saved the best for last. Now we are going to dive into my sleep system and my installation setup. I rock a hammock year round. So for my winter backpacking setup, exact same hammock that I've been using all year. This is my Dream Hammock Raven. If you guys are tired of hearing me rant and rave about the Raven, well, suck it up, because it's going to continue to happen. I absolutely freaking love this hammock. It is insanely comfortable. It is insanely versatile. And like I said in my favorite gear of 2020 video, this was my favorite piece of gear in 2020. This little stuff sack here, I've got my suspension set up. This has got my tree straps and my toggles and my whoopee slings. My tarp set up for a winter backpacking trip. I use a UGQ Winter Dream 12. I like having the doors on the end of my tarp so I can close everything off and I can stop wind and snow from blowing in on me. So I go with a UGQ Winter Dream 12. The shepherd hook stakes just really don't work on frozen ground, but I've had really good luck with the MSR ground hog stakes. So that's what I carry for staking out my tarp. Let's talk about my insulation setup for a winter backpacking trip a little bit. I've got my underquilts here. Now this green guy here, this is my 0 degree Loft Tech underquilt from Outdoor Vitals. And this brown guy here is my 20 degree Spectre partial underquilt from Little Shop of Hammocks. When I'm going out on a winter backpacking trip, the first underquilt that I grab is always the green one here. This guy I know will get me down to 0 Fahrenheit or -20 degrees Celsius. But a lot of times when I go out on a backpacking trip and say the forecast is calling for 0 Fahrenheit or -20 Celsius, I also add my 20 degree Little Shop of Hammocks Spectre partial underquilt. With the two underquilts stacked together, I know that I can get down to -35 Celsius or -35 Fahrenheit. So that's how I keep my backside warm in the hammock on a winter backpacking trip. And my theory for top insulation is much the same. I've got my UGQ 20 degree Bandit top quilt, and I supplement that by adding either my Lazy Bear blanket, or I will add an extra sleeping bag or an extra quilt. I have a huge array of, you know, different temperature rated sleeping bags and quilts, and I just kind of add whatever is going to compare with my 20 degree quilt to get me down to the temperatures that I'm going into. And that is my winter backpacking gear loadout. And now that my studio is an absolute disaster, I should probably work on cleaning that up. And while I'm doing that, you guys should head on over here and check out one of my winter backpacking trip videos. So yeah, as always guys, I'm Matty. Thank you guys so dang much for watching, and I will see you guys on the next one.